What's up, everybody, and welcome to From Console to Console, the podcast that focuses on the games and all that they have to offer. Tonight, we feature Super Mario Bros. 3, a Nintendo classic. I'll be joined today by world-renowned Super Mario Bros. 3 gamer, Teex88. Teex, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing wonderful,
Thank you so
man.
much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Teeks, before we obviously dive into one of the classics, one of the greatest Mario games and games that there are, just tell our listeners out there a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a 36-year-old nerd from New York, and yeah, I've been very interested in speedrunning since I want to say around 2016. And while I'm known for speedrunning Super Mario Bros. 3, that actually wasn't the first game that I actually got involved with. The first game that I really got invested in, at least for a relatively short amount of time, for a couple months at least, was Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo. I really enjoyed the dash mechanics, the way you can scale the walls, and really loved the upbeat music that each level had to offer. The different strategies that you can employ for the different bosses, and a lot of the high risk, high reward sort of strategies that you can potentially go for. So I kind of took my shot at the 100% tournament that was hosted on Speed Gaming back in the spring of that year. So I would look up tutorial videos. I had folks in the community Discord who would be willing to help me out and help answer questions. And because it was really my first experience and I was just throwing down my first few personal bests at the time, I can't really say that I really made it too far in that tournament bracket, but I was really thankful for that experience, and it was a real pleasure to meet a lot of the people who also participated in that as well, and actually still keep in contact with one of them to this day on occasion. And even before I got into speedrunning, one of my biggest hobbies and passions was rhythm games. So if you think like Dance Dance Revolution, In the Groove, Beatmania 2DX, Poppin' Music, U-Beat, and stuff like that, that was pretty much my bread and butter, and I played that very competitively for the last 13 years, even traveling to different parts of the country to either participate in tournaments or organize some regional events in my local area.
Oh, that's amazing. That's wild. That's really cool. How what's the furthest distance you went to do one of those events?
I would have to say Chicago,
Okay.
more specifically the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana.
Very cool.
So yeah, they had a very prominent community out there, mostly comprised of a lot of the local college students there that were really into it. So a lot of us kind of met online through message boards, and they started a club called DDR Illini, and they had their own DDR machine in the recreation room. They had their own in the groove machine. So yeah, you could if you as long as you speak to the staff in advance, you could pretty much play in your own event there and maybe have it on free play throughout the weekend. And then the tournament organizer was pretty much someone sitting at a table, just kind of looking over the challenge bracket, making sure everyone's taking care of their matches. And there's plenty of places that you can just go to hang out, get food, maybe stop at one of the local hotels, and just kind of stay there and meet a lot of the people in that area who share that same passion with you. And a lot
Nice.
of them ended up becoming lifelong friends of mine.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, anytime it's a nice, comfortable, safe environment with common interests, like it's a beautiful thing. So that's really cool that you were able to travel for, DDR especially. It was one of those games that like you used to play at like a Dave and Buster's, things stuff like that. And
Hmm.
obviously there was the at-home portion of it as well. But yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. Did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that there's a Dave and Buster's in Times Square, New York, where they
Hmm.
have one of the newer DDR releases. I think DDR Ace.
Okay.
So they have that cabinet there. But I know that New York is especially known for its it's a pretty large crowd. So
Oh yeah.
because Dave and Buster's tends to be like a sort of barcade sort of environment,
Yes.
I can't really vouch for the quality of the arrow panels and the pads.
Yeah. Well, I definitely know if I do go with a Dance Dance Revolution episode in the future, I already know who I'm going to be calling to come right back for a take two for sure.
Oh, right on. Yeah,
Love.
I can't really attest to a lot of the things that are happening in the DDR community, at least over the past few years, because I haven't really stepped on a machine since the beginning of 2017. I kind of fell out of that scene for a good while now, and it's kind of been replacing my time with just life and work, and
Of course.
it's just more comfortable just to, if I want to do something gaming or competitive, just do it from the comfort of my own home, and speedrunning just happened to fill that niche.
Absolutely, and that brings us to the game at hand and the featured game of our conversation, which is Super Mario Brothers 3. So, as a world-renowned game, and you are a world-renowned speedrunner when it comes to this game, it is the third best-selling Nintendo Entertainment System game of all time. Just bring me through the early memories of playing this game and why it became so special to you.
Well, the Super Mario NES trilogy as a whole, including SMB3, has been a staple in my family's household since I was a toddler. And when I recall my earliest memories when I was like maybe 2 or 3 years old, we had an NES in the house, and my childhood home had a little game room downstairs where we would keep the family computer, like the old Windows 95 and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I was too young to really have the hand-eye coordination necessary to wrap my head around using the buttons on a controller to control the little guy on the screen. And I do remember our NES came packaged with the SMB1 and the Duck Hunt combo card.
Yes.
So I can't really remember if it came with the Zapper too or not. I'm sure it probably did. It would probably make sense.
Yeah.
But I remember for the longest time, like, we didn't really have one, at least one that worked. But we did end up finding our replacement at Funkoland years later, back when that store was a thing.
Yeah.
And God knows I
I was
missed
gonna
it.
say that's a name drop right there. That is definitely a name drop when it comes to the store.
I mean, not only did it sell a lot of the classics that are all very close to our hearts today, but I do recall them offering console and unit repairs as well. So I know that one of the common problems was the blinking red light of doom. So I think that Funkoland offered services if you needed to replace your 72-pin connector or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like that was the original red light, the red circle of doom on the Xboxes. So yeah, I think that was the OG of that for sure.
And I remember the blinking red light became such an issue for many years down the road. So we just kind of compromised by getting a top loader.
Okay.
So yeah, it had a nice vice grip on the NES cartridge, and it played on the CRT like beautifully. But the only problem was, like, if you look in the back, you don't really have much more to connect there aside from just the power source itself.
Yes.
So it wasn't really helpful in terms of like connecting composite cables to a capture card. So you couldn't really stream on this thing.
Right, of course.
So back in like 2016, I actually went out and got myself the authentic NES toaster, as it became known. So of course, I had to struggle with the blinking red light all over again.
Yep.
And I remember a third-party company named ArcadeWorks
Okay.
was responsible for a product they released in 2015. I think it was part of like one of those fundraising campaigns where it was just sold for a limited time.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's made anymore, at least not from that company. But they had a replacement not only 72-pin connector, but also a different cartridge carrier altogether. So there was no longer that spring load at the bottom where you have to kind of push down on the card to get it to go.
Of course.
You just push it in. It's got that really strong vice grip on the contacts, and that pretty much just eliminated all the problems at once.
There you go.
Like, I've never had a problem with it since.
Love that. Yeah, that was like kind of the evolution. Did you still have to obviously do the OG of blowing on the cartridge and then it worked, or yeah?
Yeah, all throughout my childhood, I was blowing on my cartridges to make them work, and that was kind of a habit that I deviated away from years later, because I remember reading on the internet that blowing on the cartridge was actually problematic because a lot of those droplets would sometimes get stuck in the card, or sometimes they would like cause damage over an extended period of time. I don't know how much of that is true, but I did want to be on the side of caution because I do value my retro games very much. So I want
100%.
to keep them in as best of quality as I can. So.
Yes.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is the SMB3 cartridge I've had since I was a toddler. So this is what I've done all of my speed runs on. With the exception of ROM hacks or
of course
any other sort of external modifications that you need for that category.
That's impressive that you still have that. That's kind of like my Super Nintendo. I still have my Super Nintendo Super Mario RPG cartridge, my original one.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm envious of you because I actually did have an SMRPG cartridge back in like 1997 when I was in third grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when my brother rented it for the first time, that I just got hooked on it instantly. The music, just the isometric sprites, the way you navigate,
yeah,
and it became like just another all-time favorite. But I remember a friend of mine back in like I want to say 2013, 2014 asked to borrow it. He was one of my rhythm game friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I lended it to him, and it's one of those things where I just never got it back.
Oh no! Oh, I would be heartbroken. I would be absolutely heartbroken.
Yeah, but thankfully with modern technology like flash cards and stuff, there's a number of different ways that you can play it today. So,
of course.
So thankfully I'm not without one of the most amazing games in the SNES library.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. All right, so we know where it started. Now, for the listener and the viewer out there who is either unfamiliar with the game or they've only touched it briefly, can you take us on a tour of what the original game has to offer in regards to the gameplay and how it would compare? You mentioned the early trilogy of Super Mario Brothers, then Mario Brothers 2, and then Game 3, which is what we're talking about tonight. How it does compare to the first two.
Yeah, absolutely. Mario 3 was undeniably Nintendo's most ambitious game at the time that it was released, and it introduced an entire plethora of new features, including over 100 levels to play, many of which offered secretive places to explore, such as hidden coin caches, big question blocks with new power-ups, like the hammer suit, the frog suit. You have the intuitive overworld map layouts, so compared to a game like SMB1 or SMB2, where it was just kind of linear, where you play 1-1, then you go into 1-2, and so on and so forth. The overworld maps introduced like these forks in the road where you can either use a hammer to break a rock and open up a secret passageway, or you could just choose to skip certain levels altogether if there was a fork in the road, and they both ultimately led to the final goal at the end of the world, which was, the castle and the airship and stuff like that. And I really liked how each overworld map had its own music and environmental themes.
Yep.
Like World 1 had grassland, World 2 was desert, World 3 was water. And from what I've been able to gather over the years, I know World 4, the giant world, was a very common favorite among players.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And understandably so. Like, the level layouts were mostly fun. Everything was huge, fun-sized. It was just, overall, just very unique. And, the overall music was very catchy as well.
Yep.
And up to that point in the franchise's history, we were mainly familiar with Mario's power-ups being the mushroom to grow and gain the ability to take a hit.
Yep.
And then we have the fire flower. It's interesting because in SMB1, like the fireballs that you shoot were faster than the speed that Mario ran at.
Right.
Whereas in SMB3, when you had P speed, Mario outran the fireballs.
Of course.
So I thought that was a very interesting decision.
Yep.
I mean, both SMB1 and 3, and even 2 were both shared in common that you had the occasional warp zone or a secret pipe that could take you to coin caches. But SMB3 had you flying and, just discovering things in the sky with like a P-wing or a raccoon tail or a Tanuki suit.
Yep.
You can use the hammer suit to deal massive damage to Koopalings, Bowser, and bosses. And even some enemies that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to kill with the fire flower, like the dry bones.
Right.
With the Tanuki suit, you can use the statue to kill thwomps and roto discs. So everything, like everything you can get in your inventory had something unique to offer. Like there was nothing that really felt obsolete. And yeah, and SMB3 was also the first out of the trilogy to really introduce the new mechanic of P speed.
Yes.
So basically, you run in either direction, left or right, and the game would calculate how much time you've been running, and then it would start to tick up in those arrows until you were able to reach your maximum speed.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and I do believe it also was the first to introduce the sliding mechanics downhill as well, so you can get that
Yes.
nice little burst of forward momentum.
Yeah, and I think like at least from the original two. Well, the first thing that like I wanted to point out and wanted to comment on was it was that introduction to the world map. And you touched on that earlier in your response because like in 1 and 2 it was exactly what you said. It was 1-1, 1-2, blah blah blah. But like you didn't get the visual of the map in front of you. And I feel like this was the pioneer Mario game for so many in that we've seen since then. And I mean, Mario's been in hundreds of games, but like just fast forwarding all the way to the latest 2D Mario game, which is Mario Wonder, like we don't get the world map of Mario Wonder without this game. So like
Right.
this was the pioneer of the world map, and it just gave you that extra like kind of what you said. It made every world a little bit more individualized, gave it a little bit more character, gave it a little bit more feeling, and then obviously you add sounds, you add obstacles. I just remember my earlier stages of playing this game when I was younger. My sister and I would always play at my aunt's house because my aunt had the OG NES,
Hmm.
and we would literally be using Mario and Luigi. I was always Luigi, of course, for obvious
Hmm.
reasons. But we would literally, it would every time we did this, it would be a race to get to level 2 to where you, like you said, use the hammer to knock out that the secrets portion of that level in
Hmm.
order to get the suit. So like we would be basically like trying to finagle our way throughout the map to make sure we were the one to get in there first so we can get the suit. And like it was just one of those things that I had to mention because like my sister and I had a ball playing this game, and it's to this day still
Hmm.
have a great time playing it. But just circling back, like the character of the world map, if it wasn't for this game, it's not what it like the rest of the Mario games are, you know. Um, and then the other cool thing about this, when it comes to the gameplay, and that was this was the game that introduced all of Bowser's children, all the Koopalings,
Yes.
which I like. I love about like that's another like little part of this that a lot of people don't know, but this was the OG of meeting all of Bowser's little kids, you know. So
Hmm.
I just love that about this game too.
Yeah. Likewise. Yeah. You had Larry, you had Morton, you had Wendy, you had Iggy,
Yep.
Roy, Lemmy, Ludwig.
It's amazing that you literally just rambled them off perfectly like that.
Hmm.
I probably would have stopped at 4 and been like, okay, what are the other ones? But yeah, you just flew right through that. I love that, dude.
Yeah, I just kind of drilled them into my head because you have speedrun strategies against them in SMB3.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you can predict exactly what they're going to do exactly when the fight starts. As soon as you enter that pipe on the airship, you
Yep.
can predict if they're going to shoot the projectile right away, if they're going to jump right away, if they're going to move around a little bit. And a lot of those patterns are based on like an internal timer from the last level that you completed to the time you enter the pipe. And a lot of the quote unquote RNG or like the random factors that
Mm-hmm.
SMB3 has to offer all works on some sort of internal timer. So
Right.
there are a lot of factors that you can prepare for in advance, and that can really have implications in the speed run because when you know what their pattern is going to be, you can get optimal fire kills on them because each Koopaling takes about 10 fireballs to kill, and over the course of and if you do it optimally, each of them is a 3-second time save, so that really does add up over the course of the run.
Oh, I can only imagine. Obviously, I'm very low in the Super Mario Brothers 3 rankings of my speed runs, but you, my friend, and that's kind of the next topic we're going to be going into is the ROM hack slash speed running aspect of Super Mario Brothers 3. So, In regards to the evolution of the main game, the core game, there's been obviously remakes, remasters. Obviously going to when it was in Super Nintendo to Super Mario All Stars, and then when it got into the handheld platforms, when it came to Mario Brothers 4/3. I don't remember the exact name of it, but when it was on the
Oh yeah,
handheld,
Mario
yes,
4 Advance, the
Advance.
SMB3. Yeah.
Yep. So it went there. It like many games now. There's ROM hacks, and obviously there's a speedrun aspect of it. So can you tell us a little bit more about the evolution, the way you see that, and then obviously tell us a little bit about how you got into speedrunning the game
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
your success in it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've always been very fascinated about Mario ROM hacks, even just growing up. But because I didn't really have access to my console, because it belonged to my grandparents at the time, and my brother and I would pretty much go there whenever we would whenever we had a holiday, and it gave us something to do in the back room after we were finished, like opening presents or eating dinner and stuff like that. So for the longest time, I was pretty much restricted to playing the All Stars version
Mm-hmm.
on the Super Nintendo. And aside from just the very obvious things like the visuals and the music differences, um, there are some very minute differences in the mechanics and some of the level layouts as well that I noticed. For example, the elevation of the water in level 4-4 is a little bit different, as well as the elevation of the platforms that you can jump across.
Okay.
So you do have to plan your routing a little bit more different. It's not necessarily harder. It's just a minute difference in your muscle memory if you decide to go there.
Sure.
And because as just circling back to what I said before about the Koopaling fire kill patterns all being on an internal timer, I don't know if the All Stars version still uses that same algorithm in order to predict the patterns, but it's definitely become a lot more ambiguous on the Super Nintendo just because the screen transitions are a lot different. Like like when you press A to enter a level, or the time that you finish a level, and the Hammer Bros are finished moving around. Um, yeah, you end up on a different frame rule, so you could just end up with a pattern that the Koopalings can kind of take you by surprise there. And as far as projectiles are concerned, you cannot shoot fireballs or hammers when Mario is jumping so high that he's pretty much off screen.
Okay.
Whereas in the NES version, you can. So
Yeah.
you know,
Interesting.
those are some minor things that you kind of have to kind of adjust to. And because the Super Nintendo had a much stronger processor, you didn't really have to worry about lag frames as often.
Right.
So things that would ordinarily put you in slow motion on the NES version is kind of butter smooth. So you have to kind of prepare yourself for that kind of reaction. Um, but yeah, going back to what I was saying before, like I was kind of limited in my ability to play ROM hacks because
Mm-hmm.
I only had the emulator at my disposal, and I didn't have any way of plugging an NES or any sort of official Nintendo controller to like a USB port or something, because it was the early 2000s. So the most I could really do was just kind of watch videos of what developers had to offer, or
Sure.
at the very least, just kind of speculate just based on the screenshots that I saw on their home websites, because I don't think ROMHacking.net really existed back then.
No.
So it wasn't real. So it was not until I actually got my EverDrive NA Pro that I was able to just kind of patch up the ROMs and just play them on official hardware, which is something I never would have thought that I would be able to do, and that would have just blown my 13-year-old mind. And I know that among the ROM hacks that are especially popular today, a lot of them revolve around Kaizo mechanics. So you would stomp a Koopa, pick up its shell, and then like kind of bonk it on against the wall. So while you're in midair, you
Right.
pretty much stomp on the shell in order to boost your height. Or you would be in a situation where you would have to kind of thread the needle between two really like two pairs of spikes, and you
Of
just have to
course.
be like pixel perfect to just kind of squeeze in there without dying. And I'm especially appreciative of Kaizo hackers today who are at least courteous enough to give us infinite amount of lives, so we don't have to worry
Yes.
about like game overs after completing 4 or 5 levels and just spending hours on those.
Yeah, I feel like it's very comparable to Super Mario World, because there's a ton of Kaizo ROM hacks with those. I've tried a few of them, and they are generous in the sense that they have infinite lives, and it's like an automatic reset to where you die. But then they kind of like troll you. Some of them troll you in the sense that there's a death counter in the upper right corner or the
Yes.
upper left corner. And then, like, by the time you finally finish a level, it's like, okay, I just unalived like 57 times. Great. And now we're on to level 2.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because we actually do have a death counter for SMB3 now. I know that someone was able to
Oh,
develop a
wow.
patch where your death count pretty much replaces the score in the bottom center HUD.
Okay. Oh, jeez.
But yeah, we also do have the feature where you can just kind of skip the death animation and just warp right back to the overworld map and just try from the start again.
Yeah. Definitely that'll save a few seconds on those as well, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it really adds up, especially when you're having to reattempt like hundreds and hundreds of times, which in Kaizo is really not that uncommon.
No.
I mean, I know that Super Calm Bros and Rift Bros have been the most popular ones for the longest time, but I know that a couple new ROM hackers have really popped up in the scene over the past couple of years. So I would love to give a personal shout out to Jabamex. I know that he likes to make individual levels in his spare time, and he's also collaborated with random folks in the Mario 3 community, both speedrunners and otherwise, just to contribute levels and just make one cohesive package for people to check out. And I know some content creators have done playthroughs of it and uploaded it to YouTube. So it's I've been honored to participate in at least creating 2 levels.
Nice.
Just based off of the original base game. And yeah, probably most notorious in recent years is someone named Nerd Alert, who's come up with a series called Super Goth Bros.
Okay.
So he also imports his own music in there. Sometimes he just works with the MIDI live on stream, and then just you could just see him working through multiple programs and codes just to try to get everything working cohesively. So yeah, big shout outs to the SMB3 Prime community. We wouldn't be where we are without you guys. But I guess just to wrap up this this discussion, 2 ROM hacks that I would especially like to promote right now are Mario Adventure 3, which is it was developed by someone named Scarlett Dixon, and believe it or not, it took 12 years to create. So it's actually been in production for since as far back as 2013, and it just got released about 5 months ago.
Okay.
So
that's a lot of hard work. That's a lot of time.
This person really dug through the disassembly code and pretty much rewrote a lot of the game's code in order to recreate unique music, really expand on the pre-existing levels, and just create something that just feels like a fresh and new game while still keeping the feel of the Super Mario 3 physics and mechanics.
I love that.
And the one hack that's nearest and dearest to my heart also happens to be the one that I've speedrun over about 2 years ago, and that's Super Mario Bros. 3 Mix. And this was developed by Captain Southbird, and it was released in 2014. And I do believe this one took about 2 or 3 years to produce. I do believe this was a one-man project, and yeah, he was the original person who was responsible for releasing the disassembly code, which helped pave the way for a lot of other developers with their create their own patches to modify the game and so on. And it's also been the backbone that allows us to add a lot of new flag sets to the randomizer which we use today.
Yeah.
So folks like Fred Coughlin and Macobra have really been able to expand on that as far as the randomizer program goes. But going back to 3 Mix, this hack is pretty much a remix of a whole bunch of classic Mario titles going back to Mario 1, the Mario 2 that we know here in the West, aka Doki Doki Panic.
Yes.
It goes through Mario Lands 1 and 2, and it borrows music from there as well. It takes elements of Mario Galaxy.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
So, as you go world by world, it basically just pays tribute to each of those individual titles, where a lot of the levels are reconstructed to look like a lot of the levels that you played in each of those levels in each of those games individually. And they also introduced the mechanic of collecting star coins. So there's 3 in each of the 100 or so levels.
Okay.
Including some secret passageways, like similar to how Mario 3 offers theirs. And that's basically how you 100% the game.
Yeah.
Because when you collect all 300 star coins, it unlocks the secret ending and opens up a whole new world which would otherwise be inaccessible through Star Road.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, actually, Jabum X was the one who was one of the original pioneers for the speedrun community for 3mix.
Yep.
And he was very kind enough to mentor me in 2019 when he was looking for new folks to run this game and help him investigate strategies for 100%.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
So he would basically start a contest where, me and 3 other, I guess you could say, pupils or students of his would pretty much compete for the fastest times in individual worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would just take a lot of the ideas and strategies and try to base around on that, based on the power-ups and the way that you navigate through the overworld map and the different pathways that you could take. And he also introduced me to any percent, which is basically just skip all the optional levels, especially the longest ones like auto scrollers and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2019 was pretty much set the foundation for just learning and understanding the game.
Sure.
Didn't really get too particularly competitive with it outside of just a race that happened between me and the other 3 students in that community.
Gotcha.
And it was restreamed on Jabum's channel that day.
Got it.
But it wasn't until 2023 that I decided I'm gonna, I've gotten better at Mario 3 overall. I know its mechanics inside and out. I can improvise on the fly if something goes bad. I'm well aware of the mechanics of the new power-ups that it introduces, like the penguin suit and the boomerang suit and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I'm going to take this speedrun more seriously, and I'm going to grind the crap out of it. And today I have the world record for any percent in Hundo.
Love that. Congrats.
So yeah, there's still a little bit more meat on the bone as far as both those categories go. They're both well, any percent is mostly optimized, but there are still some RNG factors that like clips or Hammer Bro fights that you don't necessarily need, but can potentially get in your way, like a 50-50 chance.
Of course.
So similar to how in SMB3, where like a lot of the heaviest RNG factors, like the hands in World 8, kind of pulling you in when you're on a record pace or something. The RNG in 3mix is kind of front-loaded into the beginning of the game, so a lot of the Hammer Bros that you're looking to skip, you kind of just have to worry about in Worlds 1, 2, and 5.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's a lot earlier than the hands, which is in the dead last level of 3.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, just like in classic SMB3 fare, there are some clips that allow you to save some time and just kind of bypass some pipe transitions and some pathways, and that can add up over the course of maybe 5 or 6 seconds here or there. But thankfully, now that we have a better understanding of how the game works, there are certain subpixel manipulations that allow you to make those clips a little bit more consistent.
Got it.
And that's really helped for the early part of the game.
Beautiful. So just to clarify then, Teex, did you start speedrunning the 3mix first or the main game 3 first?
I started running the main game 3 first.
Okay.
My first... The main SMB3 kind of piqued my curiosity as a speedrun as far back as 2015.
Okay.
But I never got into it in a serious way. It was just like a casual thing where I would just try to improvise my own strategies and try to get through it as fast as I can.
Sure.
And I would just use like a very generic timer that was on my phone because I wasn't trying to submit a time to a leaderboard. This was just a fun thing that me and a couple Sky buddies decided to do one night, and just to see who could finish first. Nice. And it never really went further than that.
Oh, okay. But
because Mario 3 is one of my favorite games on the NES, and I was familiar with the speedrun community, I I started to really get fascinated with what strategies were involved by watching the games done quick marathons like GDQ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I became familiar with the names like Mitch Flower Power and Karua.
Okay.
So the first time I ever watched a GDQ run was I think in 2014 in the summer, and I never really thought to get into it because one, it's such a very long game, and two, how would I even really have the means to practice it? Like at this point, I have my NES, but there's no way you can really grind out the levels individually unless like you beat the other one first, and it takes a long time just to get to a very specific thing that you want to practice.
Right.
Like it just didn't seem like a practical thing to do, especially with my limited time.
Right, of course.
And it wasn't until many years later that I found out that there was more viable options, and I'll get into that. The first time I really wanted to take it seriously was in the summer of 2018. I was I woke up one day in the on the weekend, and I tuned into Twitch, which is something that I didn't really do all that often.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to tune into speed gaming one day, and one of my friends, Alglib and Lasso were co-hosting a Warpless tournament on speed gaming.
Okay.
And up to that point in time, I didn't know anybody else in the community except Mitch Flower Power. He was pretty much the household name for SMB3 speedrunning. Gotcha. He was the Mario 3 guy.
Okay.
And when I look at a lot of these matches between these individual players, you see a whole wide variety of people with different skill levels and different places in their journey. You have people who are finishing the run with a 54. You have people finishing with a 52. Some are just barely breaking a sub-hour. And the more that I watch these runs, like over and over again, I think, oh, maybe I could do that. Oh, maybe that doesn't look too bad.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I sought out at like maybe late at night. Just figured I would just take out my Mario 3 cartridge from the storage box, dust it off, and just run a generic timer. Just to see what would happen.
Sure.
And I had a lot more fun with it than I expected, in spite of the deaths, in spite of the coin chips that you would get. Excuse me. And after a while, I would just do run after run, and I just got addicted to just saying, green and all these time saves on my splits. I was just shaving off minutes, and it just kind of became a rabbit hole from there. So eventually, I joined the Mario speedrunning Discord.
Yep.
And that's how I just became more familiar with names. I never really interacted with that many people. I would lurk in Mitch Flower Power's channel when he was doing runs, and one day when he was finished with his session, he raided someone named the Haxer.
Okay. And
Haxer is someone who learned a lot of speedrunning stuff from Mitch. Like he was he learned directly from him, participated in contests and stuff like that. So he was pretty well along on his journey. And I think that we were only like 2 months apart in terms of like when we started learning the game. And he already had a PB of a 54. So I never really was the kind of person who looked up strategy guides or tutorials or like how do you get started with Warpless runs. I would just watch how other people did it, in this case Haxer, and I would just kind of make mental notes like maybe I could start applying this to my run. This could definitely make that faster, and so on and so forth. And then I just kind of absorbed the information like a sponge. I never really took notes. And, I would just kind of keep it in the back of my mind the more I did attempts.
Yep.
And I just kind of went from there. And through his raids and through Mitch's raids, I kind of became more familiar with other names in the community, like Stewie Cartman.
Sure.
He's another fellow speedrunner from New York. And I think he had a PB of a 53 at the time that I met him and started like actively posting in his chat. We got Zikubi, who started I think 2 months after me, and Ibuba, who's I believe a Mexican speedrunner. So these were like the original people who I like really hung out with and like wanted to learn and exchange ideas and strats with them. And every Tuesday and Thursday, we would have these weekly races in the evening after work, around like 5 or 6 p.m. And that was what we did. We would go on Speedruns Live or SRL,
Yep.
and we would open up an IRC channel, and we would just run races there once a week, and that's kind of how we bonded.
Love that. Yeah, and I think that
Mhm.
gets you, if obviously in speed running there are races like you just said. And I think that practice gets you ready for race atmosphere, cuz like even though it's more of a, you guys are friends, you guys are acquaintances, like you're feeding off each other, you're learning from each other, you are getting that race atmosphere feel
Yeah,
in those Tuesday and Thursday nights. So that's actually like in a sense you guys are helping each other out when you go and race others. So
it's in
that's really
part
cool.
that's a very important point that can't be underscored enough. Your mentality when you're just doing normal PB attempts on stream, like if something happens, you reset your timer, you
Yep.
reset your game, you press start, and you can just go right back at it again anytime you want.
Just
And if you
automatic
screw
reset.
something up in a race, you don't have the liberty of resetting unless you just want to DNF or do not finish.
Yep.
And you kind of have that pressure of learning backup strategies so you don't just come in dead last.
Sure.
Being able to improvise on the fly while not losing too much time in the process, if it can be helped. Like there's some strategies where if you mess it up, it's inevitably going to be a huge disaster, and others you can recover pretty well from.
Sure. Absolutely. So you've mentioned a lot about the Super Mario Brothers 3 community, and obviously you gave us your inspiration behind starting it, and then what's kept you going. Two basically a twofold question. One, for those who aren't familiar who are listening, you are a top 10 speedrunner in Super Mario Brothers 3 in a lot of different categories. So just off the top of your mind, if you could give the listener some insight on your rankings in like the main categories, and then the second question is more of a community based question of the Super Mario Brothers 3 community. It seems very strong. Just if you could give us a little bit more insight on the community as a whole and like kind of the culture there, I would love to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just I guess if I could list off my speedrun resume as far as
Yes,
that
sir.
community goes, we have four major categories. We have 100%, which is pretty much as it implies, all the levels, all the fortresses, all the Hammer Brother fights, and all of the Piranha plants in World 7. And to put things in perspective, the world record is a 109.36 by Mitch Flower Power, and I'm in sixth place with a 110.06. So that's actually the next objective on my agenda, just to get the sub 110. So
Yep.
that's going to be what I'm going to be streaming moving forward. In any percent warpless is as it implies, just no use of warp whistles whatsoever. And the world record in that is 50.07 by Narfman. And I just got a recent PB just 2 days ago.
There we go.
Um, for the past 2.5 years, I had a 50.53 in 10th place, and now I'm in 8th with a 50.48.
There we go. Well within that top 10 now.
Yep, thank you. And the third one, which I'm sure most people are very familiar with, is any percent no wrong warp, where you basically just use both warp whistles you get from World 1 and just go straight to World 8 and then just play it through. The world record in that, I believe, is think I think it's a 1041 or
Yeah.
1040 by Kudo, and I am in 10th with a 1047.75.
Yep.
We do have some category extensions. These are not official categories, but they're just kind of fun, gimmicky things that
Oh
you can
yeah.
do just to kind of prolong the longevity of a game. We have Small Mario only, so we have three subcategories within that, which
Oh,
is
okay.
any percent, where you basically play through worlds 1 and 2. You collect the peach letter from you collect the cloud from the peach letter after World 2.
Yep.
Use your warp whistles to go to World 8. Skip over the fortress because there's no way you can beat it small,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
then just go straight to Bowser.
There you go.
So That I still have the world record in for the past 4 years, with a 20 minutes and 16 seconds. In the small warpless, I am in second place with 55.48.
Oh, you gotta take that one. You're in second. You gotta go grab that one.
Yeah, I've actually been on record pace in small warpless a couple of times. I just keep getting pulled in by the hands, so it's just a matter of beating the odds.
I was just say, I always, with the hands, I always compare that to, I don't know, in the Mario 64 community, we call I don't know how familiar you are with it, but in Dark World, when Bowser does his dance, like when he does the dance before you spin him around, like we call it like the run is blessed when that happens. So like when I started doing, my very low key runs of Super Mario Brothers 3, like whenever I pass the hands without getting caught, I'm like, okay, this run's blessed. So like whenever that happens, I'm like, okay, let's go. And then, knowing my luck, I normally die on the next airship, and then I'm swung right back to the start of the hands, and then I get caught anyway. But that's just a side note I wanted to throw in there. But by all means, keep going. My bad, bud.
Yeah, no problem. And lastly, we have Small Mario only at 97%. Obviously, it's impossible to beat every level small. Take, for example, 6.5, where it pretty much requires you to use a tail to just fly up to the upper section, where those two dippers would be. So you skip levels like those where it would just otherwise be impossible. And I am in third place with that, with a 1:15.30. We have any percent one warp, where you use one warp whistle to just go straight to World 7, and then play that through into World 8. And I am in third place with 22.16. I have been on record pace on at least 5 different occasions, but again, it's just the hands.
Yeah, always the hands.
Yeah, the biggest obstacles in that category is pretty much the RNG hands and the clips in World 7. So it's pretty much takes the worst aspects of Warpless and just condenses it into 22 minutes. We have all secret exits.
Yep.
Where you pretty much take an alternate exit through the level where it would ordinarily give you like a secret item or something. Like with the World 1 Fortress, you get the secret passage with the warp whistle. In 5-1, you have the secret passage where you would pick up the music box and so on and so forth. So I am in second place with a 30.14. There's a Game Genie code you can put in to give yourself a permanent frog suit. And frog percent, I am in 5th place with a 31.45. Admittedly, I haven't done as many runs with that because the mechanics leave a lot to be desired.
Yes, yes they do. Things are very sticky, and it's tough. Frog suit's tough.
But thankfully, it's been made a lot easier, and the average time overall has really improved a lot thanks to a lot of the developments by folks like the Bagler 5, Human Mustard, and Old Man Beardy Locks.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Beardy Locks made a YouTube playlist of a bunch of different individual level strategies you could do with Frog Mario. So
interesting. Okay.
A lot of them just involve using the shell, so you can just make use of the normal running mechanic.
Right.
And then just route your way through accordingly while minimizing your use of hops.
Smart. Very smart.
We have all fortresses. This actually was technically a main category until it got moved back to category extensions in 2019.
Oh, okay.
I remember there was a little bit of controversy about one of the new strategies that was developed, where you would basically use arbitrary code execution in order to warp from World 7 to 8 and skipping the tank altogether.
Interesting. Okay.
So if you decide you want to do the arbitrary code execution in 7.1, it does save a minute overall compared to the older traditional route. And I know that there was the divide in the community about whether that's like a main skill that should be tested, or if this is something that we really want to have as a major category when we already have any percent which tests that exclusively.
Right.
But what I really like about all forts is that it takes a lot of the routing and a lot of the strategies that are used in both Warpless and 100% and just kind of combines them into one. And it's on average about 10 minutes shorter than Warpless, so you can expect most runs to be like maybe 42, 43 minutes at
Got
a top
it.
level.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then last but not least, we have the co-op runs. Actually, just last month, I did some co-op runs with my buddy Stewie Cartman.
Yep.
So we are in second place for Warpless with a 101.48, third place with in 100% with a 120.45, and 1309 with no wrong warp.
There you go.
So and that one has especially been the most tiresome to grind out, just because it requires both of us to get no hands for world record.
Yeah.
So you have to beat the 1 in 8 odds twice.
Twice, not just the once, the twice. Yeah,
So
that's
it's more like
tough.
a 1 in 64 chance.
That's tough. Yeah. That's great though. Yeah. So that's obviously congratulations on all your success. That's a very long list of a lot of hard work that you've put into this game, which is
And a lot of knowledge and a lot of routing that goes into
Yes.
into just really making the best of each of those individual categories, each with their own set of rules. So
Yeah. So it's a lot to be admired, especially as a fellow speedrunner, even though I'm not like necessarily deep in the Super Mario Brother community. It is just, knowing speedrunners are out there and routing and taking the time to do it, it's being paid off. It's obviously is paid off for you, which is awesome.
I wouldn't be where I am without my predecessors who pretty much paved the way for a lot of the strats that get used today. And still, every once in a while, we still find ways to optimize frames within the individual levels.
Yeah.
So we're still there's still a pretty healthy exchange of ideas in the main Discord.
Love that. Absolutely. So then I guess like what that brings me to is, and I love to ask all of my guess this question, and it's tough because it's like we're analyzing the game, one of the games we love the most. Although you're an enthusiast of the game, super successful within the game, you love the game, you've had it for a long time. Is there anything, even though it's a very game of the past, obviously it was published and created in '88, is there anything initially that you would have loved to see different about this game?
One thing.
Mm-hmm.
Consider the World 2 map, the Desert World.
Yep.
There's a space between level 2-3 and the quicksand where you would normally find the Angry Sun.
Yes.
Stick a spade card between those, for the love of God, please.
That's so specific.
I know it's specific.
I love the answer, but that is so specific.
And I'll explain why. There's an RNG outcome that's incredibly rare in Super Mario Bros. 3.
Okay.
And it has to do with how the Hammer Brothers move around on the map. So you have two Hammer Bros in World 2. The first one you would ordinarily encounter is the music box, and the other one is the hammer.
Yep.
So as you know, the hammer breaks rocks, and in this case, in World 2, it can be used to break the rock that's at the very bottom of the map as a shortcut to skip 3 levels. And then, in exchange, there's only one rock that you can't break in World 4, so you have to play an extra fortress in its stead. Okay. So you save 1 minute if you're able to get the early hammer, but you have to play the fortress in World 4. So if everything is done optimally, on average, you'll roughly save 40 seconds over the course of the run, which is huge and incredibly rare, again. And you still have a whole plethora of different RNG factors and execution that you have to get through over the course of this 50-minute game.
Sure.
And I know that there's been...
Let me just say, for you and, the amazing runners, it's a 50-minute game.
Yes.
Just wanted to preface that. But no, go on, by all means.
And I remember a buddy of ours in the SMP3 community named Louis. He ran like a generic simulation of like over 1 million different attempts between World 1 and 2. And in each case, like no matter what form of the early hammer you get, it's usually like less than 1%.
Okay.
Like that's just to put in perspective just how rare it is. Like you can go months on end without getting a single early hammer, and then just the next day you just get 2 in a row. It's just that unpredictable. And like I said, just like the Hammer Bros, just like every other RNG element in the game. Excuse me, still getting over being sick.
You're all good, by all means.
Is dictated by an internal timer that starts from the moment that you power on the game.
Oh, okay.
And what we've discovered is that there's a way to manipulate the Hammer Bros using a tool-assisted speedrun that pretty much uses all like human level strategies, but at the same time it slows down purposely in different levels just to reduce the lag, because every time you accumulate lag frames that you can't account for, it messes up your timing for the completion of individual levels, which allows you to manipulate the direction in which the Hammer Bros go. So basically, you can copy the time it takes to complete certain levels in World 2 if you line it up with the task by syncing it up with your game.
Sure.
And then just be able to make getting an early hammer an execution-based thing. And I just want to be clear, like, early hammer manipulation to this extent is allowed in the SMP3 community, but it wasn't by a huge consensus. It was more like a 60-40. It was still relatively divided. Like, when I first started running Mario 3, I knew what I was signing up for. The Hammer Brothers might not do what I want them to do. The hands might pull me in when I'm on a really good pace. But I love the game so much. I love the community. I'm going to deal with the grind, and I'm going to let my own consistency and my own improvements eventually reward me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was okay with that. So, I now reject early hammer manipulation because I just don't want external tools being introduced to my speedruns. I just want to power on the game and play just like how I did when I was a kid.
Very valid.
And just whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, very, very valid.
And I want to be clear to anyone like in the Mario community who might be listening to me right now. There was once a point in time where I was actually in favor of EH manipulation. There was only one speedrunner at the time, Mitch Flowerpower, who was really making use of the manipulations back in 2018. And he was the only one going for it, and it really paid off when he finally got his 50-30, which was the world record at the time. And I never really thought too much of it, so it's like, okay, you watch a video, you see what Mario does, and then you just pretty much copy the inputs. But I remember there was some discussion about how like it's easier to sync up a tool-assisted speedrun with an emulator compared to console. So we were wondering, like, should EH manipulation be banned just because of the discrepancies between the platforms you could play the game on and just the differences in difficulty? And all of this was really speculative. Like, we couldn't really prove that one was harder than the other. It was just kind of what we thought at the time. So Narfman was the one who pretty much developed a program that pretty much evens the playing field in terms of difficulty. So anyone, both emulator and console players, can make use of this tool. And it also introduced a little metronome. So it would tick as you get ready to press A in order to end the level, like grab the level card or grab the orb at the end of the World 2 Fortress. And these tools are basically providing information to you that you would not otherwise have when you were just doing a normal playthrough. And that's where a lot of the division comes from. Like, is this going too far, or is this legit? And it's not. It hasn't really been like a very clear-cut answer, because even though you are getting that information, you're still the one with the controller in your hand. You're the one doing the inputs. There's still like a very small margin, like frame-perfect inputs that you have to do in order to make this thing even work in the first place.
Right.
With a very, very small timing window. So it is still very execution-based, and it's still ultimately within the player's control. But yeah, it does leave that discussion open, like how far is too far.
Of course.
So I know that we're kind of at a point now where the top 6 players on the leaderboard all have used the early hammer manipulation to get what their current personal best is.
Yep.
And that's not to like downplay any of their accomplishments or anything like that, because I know I've watched every single one of these players, and I know they're all incredibly good.
Yep.
and I know they're all incredibly capable. So it's nothing against the players that make use of this strat. It's just on principle, I just don't see myself
Okay.
using this.
Fair. Very valid. Very valid. And I got to, give you and give all of the top speedrunners credit. It's from the outside looking in, you would never know that this is so detailed, so no, scripted is the wrong word. So detailed, so mathematic even, where your top record holders know this stuff. Like it's not just regular strats and hitting certain jumps and hitting certain Koopas at the right time. It literally is timing too of the actual pressing on the console, which is crazy to me. Which like
Mm-hmm.
until this conversation, I didn't know that. But like that's just I'm so fascinated, like so fascinated by it.
Mm-hmm. And I never really thought that like I would get to a point where I would really have to think about all these little details. Like all this would have gone over my head just playing this game like 6 years ago, and I never knew how like just to what extent the community's really investigated and just gone over everything with a fine comb.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Teeks, it has been obviously my honor being able to chat with you about this awesome game, the ins and outs of it, the ups and downs, and all of that. For anyone who is listening and obviously in the live recording now, where can they find you and tell, just a quick rundown of your current content and where they can find you and where they can obviously watch you? Because obviously you're a skilled player and a very detailed one at that.
Well, I'm very honored by your kind words, LuigiDini, and I greatly appreciate it. Um, as far as my current projects go, my streams are split between two things. On Tuesday and Thursday, I'm currently in the process of doing an RPG marathon. Like I said, this is pretty much my favorite genre of games, so I'm running through a lot of my old childhood classics while trying to explore it. A couple of things that I've been wanting to do for a while.
Sure.
So that's kind of been ongoing on and off. And on the weekends, I do my usual Super Mario Brothers 3 speed runs. And I'm after my most recent PB in Warpless, I am switching gears over to 100%. So I'm going to be gunning towards the sub 110 time and possibly even top 3 world record.
There we go.
And time will certainly tell with that. As far as where I can be found, I am on twitch.tv/Teex88. And on YouTube, I am at Teex88.
Beautiful. Perfect.
And on Twitter X, I am Teeks_RTA.
Wonderful. Awesome, my man. Well, Teeks, like I said, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for diving into one of my favorite games of all time as well. Diving into this during this podcast today. Again, really appreciate your time and what you do for obviously the Mario community at whole. But with all that said, guys, appreciate you guys all listening to the podcast this evening. We will be back with our next episode, which will be Red Redemption 2. With our very special guest Brianna, which will be coming in about 10 days or so. But with all that said, guys, we really appreciate you listening to us this evening. Super Mario Bros. 3 was our feature game, and for Teex88 and myself, we really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.